Hey, what's up, everyone? My astute viewers probably realized from the title that this video is about plus P and plus P plus ammunition. Now, usually what I'll do is I'll kind of put a prop that's related to what I'm doing a video on. If I'm doing a video on a Roosevelt dime, I'll have a Roosevelt dime. You might notice that I do not have any plus P or plus P plus ammo on the table, and that is because I don't have any. And the reason why I don't have any isn't because I went out and I shot it all the other night. It's because I just don't want it. And there are many reasons why I don't want it. So, for one thing, they usually cost a little bit more. And if you're going to practice a lot, eventually it's going to kind of bankrupt you. So, I really don't like to waste a lot of money on stuff like that. The other thing is, if it's something you want to carry, well, then you should practice with it a lot. So if you're going to buy really, really expensive kind of boutique rounds for your gun, you need to practice with those rounds, at least a pretty good amount of the time. That's why when I carry, let's say, a 9mm, I usually use like either Winchester white box or the Remington green and white box because they're cheap. So I get the hollow points. They're really not that expensive. Now you compare those to some of the plus P and plus P plus, you fancy schmancy specialty brands, those are quite expensive. I can go shoot a couple of hundred rounds and it's not a big deal. I don't want to go shoot a couple of hundred rounds of some round that's going to cost me like $1 something or maybe more a round. But that's only one reason why I'm not particularly fond of plus P and plus P plus ammo. As you probably realize, every time you fire a gun, there's a little explosion inside. That little explosion builds pressure, pushes the bullet out, and it goes where you want it to go, hopefully. The problem with that is your gun has to meet certain specifications. You might be familiar with like the SAMI specs on ammunition. So there's like a certain range that every caliber would operate in, especially as they relate to pressures. When you buy, regular ammunition, it's kind of like middle of the road kind of stuff, When you're buying plus P or plus P plus, it's kind of toward the very edge of what you should really be using. Now, as you might guess, that's going to put a lot of wear and tear on your gun. I would actually love to see someone on YouTube who has more ability than me as far as like setup and shooting area and stuff to do a torture test on a couple of handguns, like say, comparing two guns of the same caliber, one only shooting regular ammo and one shooting plus P plus ammunition, and see how quickly things might go awry because it puts extra wear and tear on your gun. Now, I'm not saying you're going to shoot 10 rounds and it's going to break or anything. Obviously not. But it is going to be wear and tear on your gun. It's going to be extra wear and tear. Not a good thing, especially if you're someone who only has one or two handguns. I remember when I started getting into firearms, every time I'd go to the range, I had the same handgun. I had my Beretta Neos. And I fired the crap out of that gun. Oh my God, I fired like some people might not even believe how many rounds I fired out of that handgun because it was my only handgun. I didn't, at that point in my life, I didn't sit there and say, I wonder which handgun I'm going to bring today. Oh, I think I'll bring the Beretta Neos. No, the thing was, I think I'm going to the range today, and I knew I was going to bring the Neos because it was my only handgun. Now, a little bit later on, I picked up a Beretta PX4 Storm in 45. And that one saw a whole lot of shooting action, too, because for a while, those were my only two handguns. So every time I went, that's what I brought. Though they were the only game in town, I didn't shoot anything else because I didn't have anything else. That's it. That's all. So if I were going to shoot tons of plus P ammo, I'm putting a lot more wear and tear on them than I would normally otherwise have just shooting regular ammunition. Now, if you have, multiple handguns, well, it's not quite as bad, but you get the picture. Now, back to what I was alluding to earlier, and I said that Usually I have a prop that's kind of related to what I'm talking about. Well, I don't have any boxes of plus P or plus P plus ammunition. What I do have in front of me is the rather awesome Ruger Super Blackhawk at 44 Magnum and the equally awesome, actually I like this better, Thompson Contender and 44 Magnum. If you look at certain types of, plus P and plus P plus ammunition from various calibers, a lot of times they'll specifically say not to shoot them unless you have either a Thompson Contender or a Ruger Blackhawk, or sometimes like they'll mention some other brands. Like I remember seeing Magnum Research BFRs mentioned, because I've never shot a Magnum BFR, big frame revolver, although I've heard other words for the F in BFR, but I digress. I've never shot one, but it looks like it's incredibly well made. I've heard they're incredibly well made, and I'll make the assumption they're incredibly well made. So they can pretty much put up with a lot of that stress that a plus P would put up with, just like a Contender, just like a Super Blackhawk. If you've never shot one of these two guns, they definitely feel very substantial. You can tell it's something special. You could tell it's something that is just sturdy and well made. So, that brings us with something else, that if you're going to fire plus P or plus P plus ammunition, be very careful about what you're shooting, and you know what you're shooting. Now, if you shoot, let's say, 44 Magnum plus P in a Contender, it could probably handle it better than some lower cost 44 Magnums. We'll just leave it at that. And it'll probably result in less wear and tear than some of those not quite as good 44 Magnums. But in some situations, it can be really, really bad. One example that pops into mind is the 4570. For those of you who don't know, 4570s, it's a very old cartridge. It's been around for, I believe, like 140-something, 150 years. And when it was created, it had a 44 caliber bullet, as it does now, and 70 grams of black powder. Or 70 grains of black powder. Not grams, grains. 70 grains of black powder. It was a pretty substantial round in the day, but then we moved to smokeless powder. Smokeless powder has a lot more kick than black powder. Not only that, but if you look at certain 45-70 rounds, they're kind of insane. They're crazy rounds. And if I were going to shoot some of those rounds, I'd want to make sure I was using like a Marlin lever gun or something of that nature, because again, they are very substantial, and I want to make sure I had a very well-built, robust gun. If you're familiar with the Springfield trapdoor, very cool old guns, but you don't want to shoot any of these really new ammunition that can get several thousand foot-pounds of energy. You don't want to do that. Not a good idea. The gun will probably just go to pieces. Because, again, they were made for guns that were shooting black powder and didn't have those same pressures. A lot of different stuff going on in that chamber once it gets hit off by the firing pin. So, just a few things I want you to think of if you're thinking of picking up some plus P or plus P plus ammo. Wear and tear on your gun, expensive to practice with, and the big thing is, if you don't have a real solidly built gun, is it going to hold up? And you know what? I'll even throw another one in that I just thought of now. But I know sometimes people, love rounds that just do a great deal of penetration. But if you ever needed to use your handgun in a defensive situation, you don't want to get as much penetration as you can get. You want to make sure it's the proper amount of penetration. In an ideal situation, if someone were threatening your life and you had to use a handgun, and of course this, what I'm going to describe, doesn't happen, but ideally it would enter the bad guy, do all the cavity damage it's going to do, go out the back and then just drop to the floor. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen. It still has energy when it goes out, if it goes out. But you don't want something that's going to keep trucking and possibly hurt someone else. You just don't want that. And I think to an extent, you're more likely to get that with Plus P. So, just a few things to worry about. Personally, with me, I'd rather actually get more rounds of kind of regular run-of-the-mill ammunition, like the Winchester White Box, like the Remington Green and White Box, or like probably 100 other types of ammunition. Just, regular ball rounds or regular hollow points if you're going to be carrying. I would probably leave the Plus P stuff on the shelf, especially, if you know how it is. It's an election season, and sometimes people will overreact and, they'll go on buying sprees. Sometimes there's been times where there were shortages. I would personally rather have lots of regular ammunition than just a few rounds of Plus P. Unless, of course, you have unlimited funds. You're very fortunate if you do. But if you're on a budget of any sort, I personally think it's better to have more of the regular stuff than very little of the fancy stuff. Anyway, that's all I got to say. Have a good one. If you like this video, I would really appreciate the thumbs up because, I shut off comments. Talk to you later.